There is no doubt that each of you has heard of automation in the context of job displacement. Automation eliminates jobs. Is this ethical? Is it right to put people out of work, to remove their ability to provide for themselves and their families? This is something that happens quite often these days. Someone buys a house and takes out a huge loan, thinking they can afford it with the nearly 0% interest rate they secured. They put all their money into the down payment, and then suddenly their employer lets them go because their labor has been replaced by some fancy robots that you sold. Without a job, they can't afford the mortgage, so they have to sell the house. Well, at the brink of an economic crisis, like the one we're about to face, the housing market will crash and they'll have to sell at a much lower price than expected, leaving them with significant debt. Maybe their spouse will leave them, taking the kids. Maybe they can't cope emotionally and turn to alcohol. Or maybe they take the ultimate step and commit suicide. And it's all your fault. This is terrible. We have the power to destroy lives, especially the lives of people who haven't done us any harm. In most cases, we don't even know them. The only connection we have to them is when we open our Excel sheet and look at the number of full-time equivalents, FTEs, we can save in our effort to create a positive business case for our customer with the automated solution we're engineering. To us, they are just numbers. But to them, we are little gods who can either save or destroy their lives. Now, here's an important point. This is not just true for automation. The issue I'm describing applies to any technological improvement that results in a productivity gain in any business activity. The more productive people become, the fewer workers are needed to perform a particular job. Technological advancements, including automation, are often driven by the need to increase productivity. Other factors like ergonomics, safety, and sometimes pleasure or convenience also play a role, but in the business world, it's primarily productivity, ergonomics, and safety that drive technological improvements. So how should we deal with this situation? Should we stop doing our jobs? Should we stop improving technical systems and using automation to increase productivity? You can probably already sense that this question isn't simple. It touches on several philosophical debates, such as the sacrifice of the individual for the greater good of the collective, and the idea of short-term sacrifice for long-term improvement. There's no clear answer, and every response is influenced by certain ideological perspectives. In a libertarian worldview, for example, the individual is sacred, and the role of society is to protect each individual. This is not the case for the collectivist left-wing perspective that was practiced in the USSR, Communist China, or that is represented by modern left-wing political parties. But back to our more practical problem. Let's consider a few facts and ask a few questions. Would you agree that the invention of the wheel was a good thing? It made life a lot easier and more productive. But certainly it also displaced millions of jobs or potential jobs over time. You need fewer people to push or pull a cart than to carry things by hand. Nevertheless, I assume we all agree that the invention of the wheel was a positive development. It propelled humanity forward as a whole, and probably most individuals as well. This may not have been true in the short term, but it is certainly true in the medium and long term. How about the invention of the steam engine? The development and use of steam engines, as well as other forms of mechanization, played a significant role in the Industrial Revolution. The divide between capital owners and workers grew wider. Many people lost their jobs due to increased productivity per worker, and bloody riots ensued. But just like the wheel, the steam engine lifted the prosperity of humankind to an entirely new level, and over time, the prosperity of individuals followed, even though many suffered in the short term. Now, automation does the same thing as mechanization. The main difference between automation and mechanization lies in the level of control. The physical properties of mechanized and automated systems are largely similar. You can think of automation as a more advanced version of mechanization. Both automation and mechanization in modern economies have helped lift the majority of humanity out of poverty. Today, there are more obese people in the world than those who are starving, which is an incredible achievement. Yet, whatever we do to improve the human condition, it will inevitably lead to the suffering of some individuals in the short term, although, just as with earlier advancements, they too will benefit in the medium to long term. The evidence is clear. In the Western world, where high technology penetration is relatively high, unemployment has remained low for several years. In fact, many European countries and the US experienced record low unemployment levels prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the biggest challenges in recent years was that companies struggled to hire qualified labor. It's always been difficult to find highly skilled workers, but the issue has now extended to simple, low-paid jobs, such as warehouse and production workers. And this is despite the fact that low-paid, simple jobs are precisely the kinds of positions that automation and other technologies tend to replace first. Nonetheless, the hypothesis that technology in general, or automation technology in particular, has had a negative impact on employment levels up until now, has been clearly proven wrong. However, as automation technology continues to improve and we are able to automate more and more tasks, there is still concern that at some point the process of reshuffling workers whose jobs have been displaced into new roles may encounter limitations. This is why even some prominent figures like Elon Musk have discussed the idea of unconditional basic income. While this is not the forum to debate whether or not such an idea makes sense, the mere fact that the discussion exists highlights the concerns, and we should take them seriously. You need to be aware of this conflict. You need to understand that you can easily intimidate people and make them uncomfortable. One of my former colleagues shared a story with me. After a meeting with a Swiss company, he returned to the parking lot only to find that his car had flat tires. I experienced something similar on a regular basis. When we visited customers and toured their warehouses, I was often asked not to wear my company badge or anything else that would identify me as a representative of an automation company. We were frequently asked to refrain from discussing business in front of workers, especially when they could hear us. In warehouses and production environments with a mixed fleet of AGVs and manual forklifts, it wasn't uncommon for AGVs to be tampered with, intentionally damaged, or blocked by truck drivers, triggering the emergency brake. These actions were all intended to reduce the AGV's uptime and productivity in hopes that management would reconsider installing more AGVs and replacing more manual trucks. Essentially, people were physically fighting what they saw as their adversary. To make matters worse, there are many who profit from creating fear. The world is full of complex problems, and it's all too tempting to attract attention with sensational headlines that promise simple solutions. In fact, the journalists behind this particular piece even go so far as to blame Trump's first presidency on automation, a claim that's quite far-fetched. There are websites that allow you to calculate the probability that robots will take your job. Let me read you a quote from the website where I found the robot will take our jobs picture. Capital has no rights. Robots don't need to sleep or drink. You can work them all day, getting them to do dangerous or immoral things. Someone could make a baby butchering robot, and it could go on butchering babies all day and night. Who would want that? Hitler would have loved it. I think you get the point. When robots and automation technology scare people enough to write things like this, they may easily see all of you, engineers, as their enemies. Don't take this lightly. It goes without saying that the discussion has gained new momentum with the rise of modern generative AI, particularly with the widespread popularity of ChatGPT. What is particularly interesting and remarkable is that the jobs AI is rendering redundant aren't low-skill positions, but rather well-paying, high-skill jobs, such as copywriting, programming, and similar fields. This outcome contradicts what experts had predicted for decades. Let's see how this unfolds. So, what should you do? There is no easy answer, of course. However, there are a few key actions you can take. The first and foremost is this: always maintain respect. As I emphasized earlier, you might be dealing with situations that could significantly impact the lives of several individuals. This means you must always be mindful of your language and approach. The next step is to think beyond automation. This encompasses two key ideas. First, you must make your customer aware of the importance of involving their remaining workforce in the project's success. Only the labor that remains, of course, not the labor that will be displaced. And rest assured, not all labor will be displaced. For instance, if your customer is planning to implement a goods-to-person picking system, why not encourage them to have their employees test a mock-up station? This will allow workers to suggest ergonomic improvements, ultimately boosting their productivity. You might not even need a physical mock-up. A virtual reality environment could serve the same purpose. Additionally, consider showing them the picking software screen and asking for their input on potential improvements. Encourage your customer to design the new workspace within the automation technology as a light, friendly, and air-conditioned environment where employees would enjoy spending their day. Secondly, remember that automation may not always be the best solution. Sometimes simple process improvements, more ergonomic tools, or a better warehouse management software might offer a better return on investment, lower risks, and faster implementation. Automation isn't the answer to everything. Sometimes simpler mechanization is still the superior choice. With all of this in mind, you should be excited to work in one of the most dynamic industries out there. Once you're part of it, chances are you won't want to work anywhere else.